My wife cheated, got pregnant by the other man, and when he left her, she came crawling back to me. Here's how it ended. There is a specific kind of arrogance in someone who cheats on you and simply assumes you'll always take them back, who treats your loyalty like a light switch, something they can flip off while it's convenient and flip back on the second they need it again. My wife, I'll call her Rachel, was exactly that kind of person. Rachel cheated on me. Then Rachel got pregnant by the man she cheated with. And then, when that man wanted absolutely nothing to do with her or the child, Rachel came back to me, tearful, remorseful, and fully expecting me to raise another man's baby and pretend none of it ever happened. She was so certain I would. That certainty was the most insulting part of the whole thing. This is the story of how Rachel bet her entire life on the assumption that I'd always be her fallback, and how, because I stayed calm and read the law before I felt a single thing, that assumption cost her everything. Settle in. This one is a slow, cold burn, and there's a legal twist in the middle that could genuinely protect someone watching this. Let me back up. Rachel and I had been married for 5 years. It wasn't perfect, but I thought it was solid. I was faithful, steady, a little boring maybe, the dependable one. Then Rachel reconnected with someone from her past. I'll call him Trevor, an old flame, back in her life through work and social circles. And over a few months, Rachel became someone I didn't recognize. The late nights, the phone flipped face down, the new passwords, the sudden irritation at questions she used to answer without a thought. Anyone who's lived through it knows the exact shape of it. I didn't rage. That's not who I am. And more importantly, rage doesn't help you. Instead, I got very calm, and I started paying attention. Within a few weeks, I knew. It was Trevor. It had been going on for a while. And here is the single most important decision in this entire story. I did not confront her. I want you to understand why, because it's the whole game. When you confront a cheater, you give away three things at once. You tell them exactly what you know. You give them time to prepare and cover their tracks. And you hand them the chance to flip it around and make you the villain who snooped. I wasn't going to give Rachel any of that, so I said nothing. I kept living like the same steady, oblivious husband she'd already decided to betray. And quietly, I started protecting myself. I met with a divorce attorney, not to file yet, just to understand the board before any pieces moved. I got a complete picture of our finances, what was mine, what was shared, what I needed to protect. I organized my documentation of the affair, not to humiliate anyone, but because a documented affair and clean financial records make a divorce fair and fast instead of a drawn-out war. And I sat with it. I waited. Because I had a feeling this wasn't over, and 4 years of trusting that feeling had taught me to listen to it. I was right. Because a couple of months later, everything changed. Rachel was pregnant. Now, here is where this story becomes something more than a garden variety affair. Because I knew, with near certainty, that the baby was not mine. The timing, the distance that had grown between us, the life Rachel had quietly been living, it did not add up to me being the father. It added up to Trevor. And this is the part I need every married person watching to understand, because it is a trap that has ruined lives. In many places, there's something called the marital presumption of paternity. It means that if a woman is married when she gives birth, her husband is automatically presumed to be the legal father of that child, regardless of biology. Automatically. Which means that if I had done nothing, if I had stayed passive, stayed married, and let the clock run, I could have been made the legal father of another man's child. Legally on the hook. Potentially for 18 years of child support for a kid that wasn't mine, fathered by the man my wife cheated with. That is not a hypothetical. That happens to people. And Rachel, whether she'd thought it through or not, was drifting straight toward a version of events where I got stuck with exactly that. So I stopped waiting, quietly and fast. I did not confront Rachel in a screaming match. I let my attorney move. I filed for divorce promptly, early enough and cleanly enough that the timeline was clear and documented, And critically, I made sure the question of paternity was addressed properly and legally, so that I could not be quietly slotted in as the default father of a child that wasn't mine. I protected myself from the presumption before it could ever close around me. I want to be clear. This wasn't about abandoning a child. It was about refusing to be legally and financially bound, by default and by deception, to the consequences of my wife's affair. There's a world of difference. By the time Rachel fully understood what was happening, the board had already been set, and it had not been set in her favor. Here's what Rachel had been counting on, without ever saying it out loud. She'd been counting on Trevor. In her mind, she was pregnant with the baby of the man she really wanted, and the two of them would build a life. I was, at most, a complication to be managed. And then, Trevor did what men like Trevor almost always do. The moment the affair turned into a pregnancy, the moment it became real and permanent and expensive, Trevor vanished. He didn't want a baby. He didn't want Rachel. He wanted the version of the relationship that had no consequences, and a pregnancy is nothing but consequences. He was gone. So now picture Rachel's actual situation. Pregnant. The man she'd bet her marriage on had bailed, and the steady, dependable husband she'd been so sure would always be there, the fallback, the safety net, had quietly, legally, and permanently removed himself from the equation. That's when Rachel came back. And she didn't come back small. She came back with everything. The tears, the biggest mistake of my life, the I was confused, I wasn't thinking, it meant nothing, and then the part that told me everything about how she saw me. We can raise the baby together. You're the only stable thing I've ever had. We can be a family. Read that again. She wanted me to divorce-proof her mistake, to marry myself to another man's child, to absorb the affair, the pregnancy, and the abandonment, and to hand her back the safe, comfortable life she'd thrown away, as if the past year had been a bad dream she could simply decide to wake up from. She was certain I'd say yes, because in Rachel's entire model of me, I was the person who always, always took her back. I didn't scream. I didn't lecture. I didn't even bring up Trevor by name. I just told her the truth, quietly, that I wished her and the child well, genuinely, that I would not be raising that child, and that I would not be reversing a divorce that was already, legally and emotionally, finished. That the man who could always be counted on to catch her had made a decision, months ago, when she wasn't paying attention, and the decision was that he was done being caught by. There was no cruelty in it. There didn't need to be. The situation was the punishment. All I had to do was decline to rescue her from it. The divorce finalized cleanly, exactly because I'd stayed calm and prepared early. I kept what was mine. I wasn't vindictive in the settlement. I didn't need to be. And honestly, taking things from a pregnant woman is not the kind of win I was ever after. What I protected was the thing that actually mattered. I walked away legally, free, and clear, not tethered by default to a child that wasn't mine, not on the hook for a single dollar of consequences from a betrayal I didn't choose. And I'll be honest with you, because these stories can sound colder than the reality. None of it felt like victory. Being betrayed by someone you built a life with is a wound that doesn't care how well your plan worked. For a long time, it just hurt. But there is a deep, quiet satisfaction in one very specific thing, in refusing, permanently, to be someone's backup plan. Rachel spent that entire year certain that no matter how far she strayed, the steady husband would always be standing there, waiting, ready to take her back. The single most powerful thing I ever did was make that untrue. Rachel looked at a loyal, steady, easygoing man and saw something disposable. a stepping stone to a more exciting life, and a safety net to fall back on if that life didn't pan out. She was so busy treating me as both that she never once considered I might be neither. She found out the hard way. Alone, pregnant, abandoned by the man she chose, and finally, calmly released by the man she assumed she'd never lose. Here's the lesson, and it's the same one every time on this channel. Cheaters bet on two things: that the person they cheated with is real, and that you'll always be there to fall back on. Very often, neither is true, and the fastest way to find out is to stop propping up both illusions. And a real practical one, especially for this story. If you're married, understand the paternity laws where you live. Understand that silence and delay can legally bind you to consequences that were never yours. The calm person who reads the fine print before they feel a thing is the person who walks away free. If this one landed, subscribe. There's a new story like this every week. And tell me in the comments, be honest, would you have taken her back? I already know my answer. I'll see you in the next one.